By late 1943, the 8th Air Force was in a state of transformation. The air war over Europe had reached a phase of punishing intensity. Every mission across the Channel was a test of endurance, a 6 to 8 hour ordeal in sub-zero temperatures, with waves of Luftwaffe fighters lying in wait between the coast and the target. The early optimism that a well-armed formation of B-17s could defend itself without escorts had evaporated in smoke and loss reports. Crews were learning through blood that numbers and guns alone could not guarantee survival. The problem wasn't just firepower, it was vision. The ability to detect an enemy in time, to track a fast-moving speck and lead it correctly, determined whether a bomber made it home. And visibility, at those altitudes and speeds, was a science that few fully understood. The mirror system began circulating quietly among air crews, ground chiefs and armorers, men used to fixing hydraulic leaks and clearing jammed turrets, now found themselves installing bits of reflective glass near the gunner's sight. They angled them to catch the gleam of sunlight off an approaching fighter's wings. When aligned properly, they gave tail gunners a fuller view of the sky, a warning of shapes emerging from the blinding light or the deep haze below. It wasn't an official upgrade. It wasn't even sanctioned, but it worked. Reports from squadrons like the 303rd, 379th, and 91st Bomb Groups noted improved kill ratios during rearward engagements. Some crews even began sketching the setup in their mission debrief logs, crude pencil diagrams showing mirror angles taped to the turret braces. The idea soon spread laterally through the tight-knit web of bomber crews. Word of mouth moved faster than bureaucracy. By the time technical officers caught on, dozens of aircraft were flying with makeshift visual aids. Maintenance logs recorded non-standard reflective adjustments without explanation. At Wright Field in Ohio, where the Air Technical Service Command tested new aerial systems, engineers began receiving fragmented reports describing field optical enhancements. They investigated. The findings were subtle but profound. Gunners were engaging earlier, their defensive arcs overlapping more effectively. Engagement footage showed cleaner bursts and tighter spread patterns. This field-borne innovation coincided with official experimentation on advanced sights. The N6 gun sight, standard on B-17 tail positions, relied on a mechanical reticle, effective but crude. Engineers sought to integrate gyro-assisted aiming, leading to prototypes of the K-14 computing sight that could automatically calculate deflection. Yet while those developments were years in the making, the mirror system provided an immediate practical advantage. In essence, it did for tail gunners what radar did for pilots. It extended awareness beyond direct sight lines. The men who used it didn't talk about situational awareness or field of view. They spoke in simpler terms. "It lets me see him coming," one gunner from the 381st Bomb Group reportedly said after returning from a raid over Bremen. His pilot added, "He fired before they even lined up. Never seen anything like it." The results were measurable. Between summer and autumn 1943, bomber formations with mirrored setups reported fewer successful tail attacks. German fighter pilots noted the change in after-action debriefs. Their reports described increased defensive precision from B-17 formations, bursts of fire that met them head-on instead of trailing behind. This adaptation forced the Luftwaffe to alter its tactics once more. Instead of purely rear attacks, they began favoring offset and high-angle approaches. They used the sun, the clouds, and the bomber stream's blind spots. But every shift in enemy behavior revealed how small innovations could ripple across the air war. Meanwhile, the mirror system's influence spread beyond the B-17. Crews of B-24 Liberators began adapting similar solutions. Though the Liberator's tail design differed, with its twin vertical fins and narrower field of view, the principle held. Anything that improved early detection could save lives. At Air Force design offices, word of these unofficial modifications inspired formal testing. Engineers began incorporating angled reflective surfaces within experimental sight housings. By early 1944, a small number of factory-delivered B-17Gs came with slightly revised tail assembly fittings, the earliest sign that field innovation had quietly entered official design thinking. In combat, the difference showed. During missions to Regensburg, Schweinfurt, and Berlin, tail gunners reported earlier threat acquisition and improved hit probability. Gun camera film confirmed more accurate defensive fire. not necessarily because of better weapons, but because the gunner could see his target sooner. But the mirror system's importance wasn't purely technical. It symbolized a deeper truth about the American bomber crews. These were young men, many barely 20 years old, facing death daily in an environment of freezing wind and blinding light. Their ability to improvise, to adapt with scraps of glass and tape, reflected a resilience that no training manual could teach. Every mirror installed was a silent act of defiance, against the odds, against the cold, and against the unseen enemy closing in from the rear. And yet, behind this evolution lay an even larger story, the transformation of the B-17 itself from a simple bomber into a complex machine of interlocking human and mechanical defense. For the gunners, each mission was a balance of terror and routine. They climbed into the tail section before dawn, breath visible in the frigid air, the sound of engines rising to a deep, bone-shaking roar. Their world was confined, a narrow metal cocoon with twin 50-caliber Brownings jutting into the void. The mirror system offered not comfort but control, a way to reclaim precious seconds from chaos. A reflection in glass could mean the difference between survival and fire. The tail gunner's view was the last line of defense for 10 men and 1 machine. From the perspective of engineering, the B-17 was never static. Every mission returned lessons written in bullet holes and burn marks. Each crew modification, no matter how crude, told the Air Force what worked in the real sky, what theories failed when confronted by the enemy's cunning. The mirror system was one of hundreds of battlefield-born improvements that shaped the evolution of the bomber force. It showed how innovation could come not from laboratories, but from the frozen hands of men thousands of feet above Europe. To the enemy, it changed the rhythm of battle. Luftwaffe pilots who once counted on surprise now found themselves caught in defensive crossfire earlier. Their brief moments of invisibility shrank. They began losing aircraft at higher rates, particularly in head-on or tail-chase engagements. This didn't alter the strategic balance overnight, but it added weight to the gradual shift in air superiority. As the war continued, official recognition of such field ingenuity grew. Training manuals began referencing expanded visual scanning techniques. Technical orders noted the advantage of reflective aids in glare-heavy conditions. Though no document ever formally credited the unknown gunner who first taped a mirror near his sight, his idea had already changed the rhythm of air combat. By the spring of 1944, long-range escort fighters like the P-51 Mustang had begun to take the burden off the bombers. Yet the habits and tools born in the dark months of 1943 remained. The mirror system continued to be used quietly, even as technology advanced. It was a reminder of how necessity shapes invention, how small acts of adaptation ripple through war's machinery. The flying fortress, once seen as merely a weapon of destruction, had become a symbol of endurance and ingenuity. Every bolt, every gun, every mirror told a story of human minds refusing to surrender to the conditions of war. For the tail gunners who fought with glass and courage, it was proof that even in the harshest corners of the sky, survival often depended on a single, simple idea and the will to see it through. By mid-1943, the Luftwaffe had refined its interception tactics. The classic head-on attacks were deadly but high risk, so German pilots began favoring coordinated rear assaults. They would climb to altitude, position behind the formation and attack in groups of 2s or 3s. One above, one below, one directly behind. Their cannon fire, synchronized in deadly waves, could punch through the bomber stream in seconds. Tail gunners faced impossible odds. Spotting the first attacker often meant missing the second. The angles of approach were deceptive and the horizon offered no depth perception. Crews began to realize that survival required more than training. It required innovation. That's where small field modifications began to emerge. In the frozen dispersal points of English airfields, men experimented. Some adjusted their gun sight brackets, angling them slightly downward for better coverage of the 6 o'clock low position. Others added makeshift periscopes scavenged from old optical gear. But it was one inventive gunner, whose name never appeared in official reports, who introduced the concept that would quietly change tail gunnery: reflective augmentation. His design was primitive. Using fragments of signal mirror and sections of old navigational glass, he positioned them within the tail housing, to catch light from angles normally outside his vision. By adjusting their tilt, he could monitor regions otherwise blind to him. The lower left and right quadrants where many FW-190s approached undetected. The mirror wasn't meant to aim. It was meant to warn.